All right, welcome to this lesson. This one we're going to be creating a material, a shader. It's going to be a chipped paint material. So one of the big things you're going to get out of this is using textures to create physical, edits. What I would call like edits. We're changing the way roughness looks. We're using bump. We're doing things, and we're using masking to reveal everything on one shader node. So we're not masking one shader to another shader. We're going to be harnessing the full potential of the principled BSDF, which is a crazy awesome node in Blender. If you haven't touched it, if you don't really know it, but today I'm going to show you the power of masking and how to really harness it to create really interesting, really awesome materials. We're then going to compile it so that you can use it in the asset browser later on and make edits and not have to play with the nodes every single time. All that fun stuff. Let's get into it. All right, so we are going to use a sphere for this. So I'm going to go to Mesh to Icosphere, and then I'm just going to go ahead and subdivide them in Shade Smooth. And then we're going to open up a new window. We're going to click this button here and go to the shader editor, and I'm going to hit in. Let's go ahead and click new, and I am going to go to the material preview and let's build this guy. So I'm right up here on these gizmos. I'm just going to click and drag so we don't see them anymore, and I'm going to move him because he'll be selected indefinitely. Here we have the principled BSDF. First, let's go ahead and play with some color. Well, actually, first, let's create our mask. That's really going to be super powerful for throughout the remainder of this. It's going to be a fun little Voronoi texture. And then let's get a color ramp. COL, color ramp. Plug color this time into it. And then I'm going to hit Control-Shift-Click so we can see what we are working with. I'm going to hit Control-T and use the object coordinate, and that's so that this material will present evenly on whatever surface we put it on, regardless of size, all that fun stuff. All right, so let's go ahead and crunch in our first bit. So I'm gonna go from linear to constant on this and reveal some patterns here. So we're gonna use black. You can basically decide this in advance. I'm deciding that black is going to reveal metal, white is going to reveal our paint. And so let's go ahead and bring our scale to something like this. These are going to be our big chips that we are going to now need to distort. So I'm going to hit G and move this over, and let's add a little bit of distortion because I want this to be realistic. And these very straight lines are not entirely realistic. So what are we going to do? Just like I showed in the previous lesson, we're going to throw a noise texture on this to give it a little bit of organic grunge. Let's throw it right there. And so now we have done that, right? And so let's bring our detail to 12. And I like to bring my detail to 12. That's kind of as far as I push it, because the more detail, the harder it's going to be on your computer, especially for procedural materials. So we've now added detail to those shapes, but those shapes, of course, unrecognizable. So we're going to get that bypass node. That's what I'm going to basically call it. It's a mixed color, but we're treating it like a bypass. So let's plug that here. And remember when I showed you in the original lesson, that's how we're doing this. So we'll bring that factor over to the right and then just introduce it a little bit. So now we have this. And now we have this scale here. And of course, if you don't like the exact pattern that you're seeing, you can switch it over to 4D and pick, hey, how do I want this to look? So now we have this. I want more chips, but I want different sized chips. These are essentially the same scale because we're at a scale of 4.48, a scale of 4.8. But I want smaller ones and bigger ones together, which means we're going to have to use, and I want 3 levels of scale. So that's going to be 3 different Voronoi nodes that we're going to be using a mix color to combine them. So let's go ahead and do that. And I'll just move him. Actually, we'll just delete him. So what we need to get is a mix color node, plop him here, and let's make this color black. Bring it up, and we're going to plug in a new Voronoi texture into the factor. So what you can do, because I want to keep it distorted, you can hit Control-Shift-D, and that keeps whatever that's behind this connected to him. And then I'm going to get a new color ramp. We'll plug color into that. and then plug color into factor. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring up my scale, and then we're going to flip my color ramp like this, and then bring that scale up. So now we have this. Now we have this. Doing that, we just had to flip our color ramp, and then I'm going to bring my scale up. These are going to be the medium-sized ones, so right about here. So now we have a clear difference in scale, and now I want one more. So I'm going to hit Control-Shift-D. Oops. Click on this Voronoi. Control-Shift-D. Click on him. Bring up a color ramp, and then see this mix. Let's just go ahead and Shift Duplicate right onto there. See, we want him plugged into A, another black color, and then plug this color ramp into the factor, and then plug color of the new Voronoi, which is going to be our smallest pieces, into here. So we are infinitely adding masking. We are just stacking masks. And then let's bring that scale up, and then maybe we'll do a lot fewer of them, and maybe fewer of these too. There we go. Now we have this, and then I want to add a little bit of grunge to make it a little more realistic, like this thing's been through some stuff. That is going to be one more mask. So hit Shift-D, plop him here. We are going to get a new color ramp. And let's say I'm going to highlight these guys. I'm going to hit G, and we're going to get a noise texture to add some grunge on top of everything. And then we'll use this mapping node and plug it into the vector of our noise. Plug factor here, and then plug that here. And now we're going to create a grunge layer on top of all of these shapes that we've just created. So we're going to bring our detail to 12, and let's crunch this. Let's start to crunch this guy in. And now imagine that these black portions are revealing paint, or revealing metal, right? And so I do want to respect that. So let's bring the roughness up. And then in my case, because everything has a constant interpolation on the linear, just a constant color. Interpolation is for keyframes. So we can just kind of do that. So let's add this on top. There we go. Now we have some color, some grunge, and you can bring this on top of here and do that. But now it is adding a little bit of that craziness onto everything, and then we can just kind of play with this. There we go. I like this. I like this a lot. And so now everything where you see black is going to reveal a metal texture, a metal surface, and everywhere where it's white is going to be our paint. We have now created our mask through these textures, this noise and these three Voronoi nodes, and then we've distorted it with this noise texture. Now we have the preparation for the rest of this. So I held down Control and I sliced it. Now we need to get a principled BSDF. We'll plug him here. And I did mention color, I mentioned metallic, and so what I want to do is just plug this guy straight into the metallic. And then we'll let him load. There we go. So now we have this. Notice we have metal and we have plastic essentially, and that's because, see this metallic material here, this metallic slider? Bring it all the way to 1, he is going to be metal. All the way to 0, it's going to be like our plastic. So remember, the value of 0 and 1 is like black, white. So that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with Control-Shift-Click, black and white. So that's, again, like masking, revealing aspects of our material. So I'm just going to go ahead and plug him here into the base color, into the metallic. And now we have this. Now, on the chance that oh no, I wanted this to be the metal, not the plastic, you can get an invert node or invert color. And you could plug that there. And now it's going to invert it, this is what we want. Now the other way to do this is with another color ramp, because it's basically it's inverting it. So what was black is going to be white, and what was white was going to be black. So it's just flipping it, which again is just like a flipping your color ramp. The only thing about the color ramp is it's more powerful than the invert node, because not only can you, in this case, flip the color ramp, but you can then edit it more if there were gradients. If you could see gradients, then you can crunch it. But because this is all just constant on the color ramp, it's not going to do anything. So, which is why I'm just going to use the invert node, because it's a much more simple looking thing, and you can actually mix these if you want. Now that we're here, we have this. We have our base color, which is going to change everything, right? But in this case, we have our invert. I'm going to leave him and make him small. We're going to get a color ramp this time because we need to manipulate color. But I have a fun trick to show you. We are going to compile all of these nodes into a usable group node so you can have control of the color later. So one thing you can do is you can either just get a color ramp, be really standard about it, plug him, our mask into here, plug him into the base color, and then let it load. And we are going to see, dun, 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 there we go. So we can go ahead and color our material. See, the white is going to be a nice orange. The black is going to be our metal, so we'll do something like that. And now we're here, right? And you can color it here, but in order to change colors, you have to go click on the color ramp and then change it here. But when we go to compile it for a group node, you can't actually control it outside over here. And that'll make sense more as we go, but just so that it does make sense, I'll show you what a finished group node looks like. If I go to my real-time materials, and then I go, let's say, use this metallic here. We have right over here, you can see how we can see color, and you can change your colors over here, and I can make it really bright. This is a group node. If I hit tab, this is all of that craziness into one thing, right? And what I wanted to talk about, what I'm talking about is the color here. We have access, which is also accessed over here, but I'm going to go ahead and delete him. We're going to go back. You can't do that with a color ramp. But here's what's fun. If we get in a mix color, and then we plug that into the factor, this entire mask is plugged into the factor, and plug this into the base color, you can now have A/B control. See this right here? This means you can turn it into a group node. So I can go ahead and say, okay, so he's the metal. So let's bring him here, bring him all the way up like that. And now we have control right here, which is super fun, and we'll be very grateful for it once we compile this into a group node. Now we're here. Let's go ahead and add a little bit of roughness fun to this. So what we can do is we can get another mix color, plug it into the roughness, and now we can have some control. So let's plug this this whole big guy, plug that into our mix. And again, what I'm doing is showing you optimizing it for being able to compile it into a group node. So you can see now we can have control. So if we bring it all the way to black, the paint is super glossy. If you bring it up to white, this paint is completely rough. Same exact story. And that's because the mask is plugged into the mix. But what that allows now is a little bit of fun. So I'm going to go ahead and get another color ramp and plug that into A is controlling the metal. So we'll plug that into A, and we'll get in a noise texture. And then we'll get that mapping node way over here and plug it right into the noise texture. Plug that into the color ramp. Like I showed here, of course, roughness, 0 is pure gloss, 1 is pure rough. So if we plug this mix into here, which is right now, we're just going to look at this roughness that's plugged into a noise texture. If we crunch in our color ramp and then say bring your detail to 12 and bring your roughness up, you can have some fun. Bring this guy over and we can have some fun. So looking at this and say, hey, I like this part. Maybe we can bring it down a little bit, but I don't like that it's still kind of shiny, right? You can see it, like the reflection. You can see there's trees out there. That's because this black is showing pure glossy reflection. And so what you can do is just bring it closer to white, and that will roughen it out. There we go. So now we're just controlling this guy in here. And then with this guy, you can just do that. But of course, that's going to look weird in the final thing, right? For our group node. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to get a clamp node, and now we have a value min max. So I'm going to reduce him here, bring him up. We're going to plug our clamp into B. So now what's going to happen is we now have this value slider. So if we see min, the max of 1, which is super rough, min of 0, which is complete gloss, like I mentioned. So now you can change this value and look at the paint. It's glossy or it's not, right? Because value of 0 is pure gloss, value of 1 is pure rough. And then once we create our group node, you can control these two guys. But what's fun is, see how we have this color ramp? Watch this. I'm going to go ahead and slice him, and we're going to put a clamp node. I'm just going to go ahead and highlight these guys. Give it a little, I hit highlight and I hit G to give him some space. I'm going to go ahead and get a new clamp node, and let's plug the color ramp into the value, and then plug that into the A. And so now, remember, like I mentioned, color ramps, you can't control them once you turn it into a group node because there's no input right here. But now, once we turn this into a group node, we have our controls over here. You can play with your min and your max. So let's bring this guy to a black. And then now see this min, you can bring it up and meet it halfway like that. So you can bring it like this and then bring up your max. And so now you can have a little bit of fun with that, but you'll be able to control it later with your min and your max. And we can do the same thing on this guy. But in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and plug the same one into all of them. But I wanted to show you that. So this thing is he'll just control the roughness of the entire material within that. And you might say, hey, you could have just used a map range. I don't want to. We'll do our min of 0, max of 1, and then see how it's super glossy. That min, just bring it up a little bit. And now we're here. So we'll be able to control this later with this clamp. Now let's add a little bit of bump here to make it look like some actual paint was chipped off. And that's going to be with a bump node. So we'll get a BUM, bump, plug it into the normal, and then we'll plug this whole mask into the height. Now what we can do for it to be accurate, we'll do our distance at 0.1, and then you can bring your strength down, but bring it up a little bit. And now it's going to look like a little bit of paint was actually chipped off here. Really fun. We're pretty much done here. This is our new material. Now I want to show you how to compile things into a group node in order to make it look like it looks proper. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and highlight this all the way up until, don't highlight the material output, just all the way up until that, and then hit Control G. And you've now entered the group node zone. Let's see what we can do here. The first thing I like to do is allow you to control color. I like that to be the top of my group node. So what we'll do is we'll take this group input node and we'll come over here and we'll plug that into A and B. And you'll notice right over here, if you click on the material button, you'll notice your outputs start to show up. And if you are a real-time materials user, you'll see them show up here as well. We're going to go back and we have our color. Now I want to play with our, I guess we'll do roughness next, which is this clamp node right here. So let's bring him over here and we're going to get our roughness minimum and our roughness maximum. Oops. And our roughness maximum. So now they're revealed here. So you can bring your minimum down to make it shiny, and then bring that down to make it super shiny if you want. You now have your control right there on this one. Now let's go ahead and give us some control of our patterns. And so that's going to be these Voronoi nodes, and we'll just leave him alone. We're not even going to allow control for him. And then we'll play with this noise texture here. So let's go the scale of this guy, and the scale of this guy, so that now we can play with that out here. And then the last thing we want to play with is this noise texture. So we'll plug in the scale of this guy, which we are going to call the grunge. And then I'm going to hit tab. And now we have this full group node sitting here, and we'll call it chipped paint. Now we have this. So we can see we have control over our color of both the paint and the metal. We have control over our roughness here, so you can play with that and say, hey, let's make them a little bit more rough here. So now we have control over our roughness, just like this, playing with that. We have control of the scale of each of our things, like this, and the grunge. Here's the problem, though. I don't like the way these are titled. And if I want to give this to someone or put this in my asset browser to use later, I want to be able to not have to remember what I was thinking when I built it. So I know what all these, like this says scale 4 times. That's not a very good user experience. So here's what we'll do. We'll hit tab, and then I'm going to hit in to reveal this thing here. So we can see the corresponding things over here. So what I'll do here is see A and B. I'll just double click, color, color, and we don't need to say paint color, metal color, because it just makes sense that it corresponds there. Min max, I'll call it min roughness, which I misspelled, ROUGHNESS, and then I will copy that, max roughness. Here in the scale, we'll do, this was the small ones, and you can see the value here, small ones, medium ones, large ones. So I'll just say S, small shape, medium, and large shape. And then this guy, we'll call it grunge. And now we have this big group node if we want to use it in the shader editor. But what's cool is if I remove this window, we're just here and I've just applied this material to this object, I can go over here to my shader settings and I go, oh, we have everything right here. So I want this guy to be a little more glossy. So I'll bring my max roughness to 0. I'll actually bring our min roughness to 0 and then our max up just a little bit. So he's kind of shiny, but kind of not. Maybe bring it up just a little bit more. Our large shapes, I want to move them here. And then if you wanted to, you could enable the W of each shape and give them control there. I want to control my grunge. I want to have maybe 0.1 on the grunge to make it a lot more obvious, or you can bring it up and down. So all of this is here, and then you can add it to your asset browser or save this file and sell it as a as one of your pieces of shader art as an asset. All of this gives you the power here, but this is how I create materials, and that is how I create these materials. Now, this idea is very transferable to other things like creating maybe plastic on metal or different things like that and using the bump node. But that is how I create full materials using masking and going, hey, how can I think about this material that I'm looking at? How can I just maybe use bump? How can I use roughness? All of these things using the values between 1 and 0, which translate to black and white, and putting them on something. There's so much to really explore here, more to use, more to come in this course for this idea, but a lot of really awesome things to apply to other ideas through this one material. But with that being said, thank you guys for watching. I ended that like a YouTube video. This is not a YouTube video. Thank you guys for watching anyway. But yeah, we are going to move on to the next lesson and have a good time.